Hello, in this episode, we'll discuss about and go through a simple example of XGBoost. What is XGBoost? Simply speaking, it is an efficient tree solving method. So a tree is a way to predict the data by slicing binary trees sequentially. For example, if there's a data, is the height higher than 6 feet? Yes and no. And you can ask sequential questions to eventually sharpen and classify the data in several bins. Okay? The downside of this tree is that it's very unstable, meaning if the data slightly changes, the tree model completely changes. And that's very unstable and undesirable thing to do. So what people do is that instead use a random forest, which is you have an actual data and take a bootstrap or subsample, like multiple of them, and have different kind of tree models, okay, and have the predictions and all. And there will be outcomes for that, and take the average as the outcome. So it's an aggregate of multiple simultaneously running several tree models, and then take the average of these multiple models. And there's an improved method, which is basically gradient boosting. And what gradient boosting does is that, well, it also subsamples it. But after subsampling, it takes model 1 and do a prediction, and then improves on it and feeds into the model 2. The model 2 is actually better than model 1. And in the third sample, using the third sample, and does it, and so. So it's this is what's called gradient boosting, and XGBoost is an efficient regularized method of gradient boosting. Okay? So enough with this quick introduction, and let's go to the example. So it's really simple. So here is a tutorial file. So there, it can be done, the trees can be done in classifier or in a regression framework. So let's see. But first, load the data, and what we'll be using here, first the classifier using the default prediction. The default is the data we had a while ago about the Kaggle data on the default. So whether you're employed, bank balance, and annual salary, and whether one defaulted or not, and predict it. So the tree here is the yes and no question of defaulting, and make a prediction on that. Right? So let's load the libraries. So it's an XGB classifier is because we are wanting to have the default or not defaulted or bin classify. Now let's load the data, default data. Now have it on a Google server. Now we read it into our data frame. And we don't want the first column of the data because it's a serial number, they ignore it. So it's a 2, 3, 4, column 2, 3, 4 we'll be having. And the last one is actually the outcome variable. So here we'll have it like this, X and Y data. And we split the test and train data. So here with the train test split function we typically use. All right, 1/3 with the test size. And now fitting. So it's really simple. XGB classifier and call it a model, and then fit the X train data on the Y train data, fit. All done. And now you can use it. The model is now ready to be trained. You can just do predict and then have the text data and get the predictions. You can see how accurate they are by comparing it against the actual outcome. And it's about 97% accurate. So it's not bad, isn't it? So this is how to use XGBoost as a classifier. It can also be used as a regression, meaning a continuous variable on the prices. For example, like Boston housing prices. Remember we had the Boston housing, a lot of characteristics, and then we want to have the median sales price for that. Yeah. So let's load it. So this time we'll be using an XGBoost library. And here's the Boston data that's loaded. It's frequently used data, so it's already ready inside the sklearn, scikit-learn. So the XGBoost has a special function called XGB regressor, and that is for regression. It's a classification. And you just fit the X train and Y train. All done. That's very quick. And then you can have the training score. So it's fairly reasonably accurate measure. And cross-validation, you can do this kind of method, or you can do k-fold, if you heard about such thing. You split the sample into 10 pieces and rotate one of the subsample to be the test data, and take the average of these 10 trials of using the test data for these 10 bins. It's fairly fast, okay? So it's fairly accurate. And you can, of course, just do the X-test and predict the XGBoost tree that you trained and have a prediction and get the mean square error, okay? And finally, you can also plot the test and prediction, how good they are. So the original is the blue and orange is the predicted, and you can see it kind of reasonably tracks it. Okay? So this is how you use XGBoost for classification and regression problem. Thank you for watching this episode.